Hello to everyone. Welcome this evening. A good evening to you all. And this is our Gift of Truth educational session for today. The date is Tuesday, the 31st of January, 2023. And the topic for this session is Express Trusts at Common Law, an introduction and overview. Karen is doing the education for us this evening, and we are asking everybody to please keep your microphones on mute during the presentation. We will open the floor up to questions and answers after the presentation is completed. Without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Thank you to everybody for being here. Karen, the floor is yours. I'm going to put your share screen up right now, and everybody please enjoy your session.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. And I'm so pleased to be able to share probably my favorite topic out of the whole common law. I've always been involved in land and property, and it's always been my main interest. So my introduction to the Express Trust was to be able to get my land into a vehicle that nobody could attach or touch, or obviously the expropriation bill is also looming. So I found this vehicle and dived into it, and it's been fantastic. I operate with it, so I have the experience, and I run it by the book so that I can share this knowledge with all of you. But it's taken me a lot further to understand that it's probably the most flexible vehicle in the world that you can actually operate through and there's something called a PMA, which is a private club in a way, but you're still involved with taxmen and things like that. So a very big attractive thing is not a taxable vehicle. This, not that everyone's going to get out of tax as of yet, but the vehicle isn't taxable, which is very, very important right now. So Common Law Express Trust Organization, it's a wonderful vehicle to learn the arts of self-governance and the exercising of your unalienable rights and freedoms as a people while you keep the government at arm's length. So this trust you're operating like a separate little government that feels like you're operating a company. It's got very much the same as a company structure. So if you have experience there, you'll see the difference, but it's pretty much a similar structure. So if you can think on that level, it's just that you're moving yourself out of the corporate fiction zone and you're in private law zone. So it can be used as a business vehicle with a board of trustees as the governing body for schools, all businesses, municipalities, small villages, collective communities, medical practices, clubs, militias, countries, churches, etc. So this Express Trust, if you probably all know, if you've done a bit of common law, what the Setuki Trust is. So it's basically a similar trust. It's almost the same, actually, with the uncorrupted. So the trustees can also be attorneys, in fact, which I advise you all to go and research. As we go along, I'm not going to do the entire history here because time is of the essence for all of us in the world right now and what's going on. So I'm diving into it so that you can end up with a template in your hand and you can begin. And it's best to start on a practical level than move backwards. I've found that out myself. So by now, we should all be familiar that you have a double, a consenting legal slave, strawman, all caps name, debtor, corporate fiction, with knowledge of the birth certificate fraud and your way out with the emancipation process. You change the strawman's position, which is the slave, as we've now learned, and you change his position to a trustee in commerce for the Express Trust. And he does all the commerce for the living man, because you know he's a capitalized dead entity. So he then represents the trust and takes up a trustee position, which is what our government's supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be our trustees. And then he contracts with the corporate and the commercial world and holds the living men in privacy inside the trust. But the living man's instructing the trustee what to do all the time. So, and as he does all commerce for the living man beneficiary and operates as a shield against corporate governments and courts. He owns nothing after he sells all his registered property to his living man. So everything in registration, as you all know, under Crown, is all registered. You don't own it. It's all registered in the Crown. So including your land, as we discussed last week. So the big thing is that you've got to move everything, remembering that children and yourself, you're put down as property in the structure. So you're moving your entire property, including your living man, and you're putting it under the veil, I suppose you could call him, of the strawman trustee in commerce, which is now let government know that he's in the same position as government, but higher, and he's in a higher position now, because he is on the land, protecting the landmen and operating as a legal fiction, but he has a value attached to it, which is what government did this to us for in the first place, is to put a value on us, which is the slavery. Always remember, so you can see I've done Frank B. Ernest. I've particularly used a title there. There are so many varieties of our name in titles and F.B. Ernest, it could be F. Ben Ernest. They're all under municipal, corporate, you made into trusts, into lots of different trusts, your actual straw man is. So you can see then, you can see the donor, which is the trustee, is going to take all his assets and he's going to sell them into the land trust with real money, like a very low sum in gold. So it's always best for the trust to hold a gold coin or a silver coin. It's enough to have one of each actually to be able to do all the transactions. So as you can see, Frank B. Ernest is the donor of the trust because he's now sold all the goods. He's donated it to the trust. And he becomes the trustee in commerce, as we've discussed. He is the straw man. Then all caps legal fiction person. Remember the word person, because that's one of the biggest traps in the whole system. You're not a person. You're legal fiction. There's I think it's the Act of 1957, the law of person in our laws, in our legislation, policy, and codes. And under no circumstances anywhere in that act does it refer to anything that lives, breathes, beings, people. There's no people in it. They're not allowed to contract with people, the government. I'll explain that later. So always remember that Frank B. Ernest is the authorized representative for Frank Ben Ernest, the real man. It's so important to understand your double and you live accordingly. So you'll find yourself moving towards actually understanding what it is to be a man and how you are trapped into this corporate structure, which is taking us down. It's actually causing massive depression because we're not sure and we're all going around in circles. Not the earth circles. So the man, in his lawful, natural right, creates an express trust by private lawful contract, agreeing to convey all his straw man registered assets, legal estate, entirely into a lawful common law express trust. It's a lawful land estate. It's actually called a living trust because it's actually a form of a will. So you move everything from the sea to land jurisdiction, of which government has absolutely no jurisdiction. I put the word jurisdiction into red because you're going to use the art and of understanding jurisdiction and how it gets you out of everything. So you learn how to serve jurisdiction letters that are not in your venue. You'll get templates for everything of this. Once we're just getting people to help us take all the documents and turn them into templates for all of you. So the ones who create the common law trust, the creator, as you know, he's the donor. He may mold the instrument into whatever form he pleases, and whatever he may lawfully do for himself, he may authorize another, the trustee himself, to do for himself. This requires no benefit or privilege or franchise from government or any outside party, and therefore the parties owe no duty to government or any outside party. The only reason the government can come down on you is because they believe and they act as though you are paying for the benefits and privileges that they're granting you, and you therefore pay taxes. So you want to remove all benefits and privileges and franchises from government. It's sui juris. Of the pure, I put this in because you can go and download a book on sui juris. It's valuable. Store it in your computer and use it. So it's of the pure, unadulterated, common law, natural rights. If remaining in honor, the trust is afforded all the common law protections given to private contracts, especially in obligation to them. This is paramount in operating the trust. As we go along, we'll go into all these practical things with greater depth. You can actually start your trust instruments and learn as you go along. We're giving you as much information so that you could actually do the trust instruments. And if you're not sure about it and you're nervous and you're in a hurry to do it, you can contact Michelle and we will have people at small donations in exchange for information. We will help you do them. So the benefits of the trust instrument is a subject to a higher law, the common law. It's a higher law than corporate law and the law that we're under, or legalism. Legalism is no law at all. It's a legal structure. It's the undoing of God's law. That's what legal means. So it's subject to a higher law or common law with a board of trustees governing with share certificates. Do you see how it's similar to a company? But the share certificates and the board of trustees function on a different level. So B, you the holders, the owners of the beneficiaries, not subject to lawsuits unless laws are broken by the trustees. Not accountable to the certificate holders, trustees can lose their job only for illegal activities. Shareholders, this only means the shareholders with no beneficiary status. So you are able to have a shareholder in this thing. You'll see from when you do, if you want to set up businesses. And then you have the beneficiaries with shareholder certificates, and you have beneficiaries without. So the trustee is not accountable to the certificate holder who's not a beneficiary. So the trust is not a taxpayer by SARS definition. No federal filing requirements to all operations, books, all information that government can normally access a company. They cannot come near your trust. It's under private law. So to all operating books of the trust, private law, and the trust is living in the private. No transactions are reviewed by government. As you can see, they can't come in and actually look at your books and demand anything. Trustees operate within wide limits, very wide limits. You'll start seeing the strawman can benefit all of you. Trustees are accountable for intent. This is sounds strange, but as you go along, you'll see that the entire decision-making around the whole body of the trust is around the trustee's intention. And a fiduciary, there are fiduciary rules and laws that I highly recommend that you look around. There's so much available on the internet under fiduciary, but particularly look under common law, because it's a very creative position to hold, actually. It gets very creative, I must just tell you, because then you can see it's like that film Catch Me If You Can, and they can't catch you. That's the whole point, because you're holding higher office than they are as a man on the land. So trustees never need to distribute funds, but can for many reasons. Just to let you know that this trust can be a profit-making trust and used as a profit-making vehicle. And then to let you know that all the monies get distributed to the trustees, to the beneficiaries, however the trust operates, and that the beneficiaries are liable for their personal taxes. We'll go into the tax man sometime too. Trustees may distribute whatever funds for whatever reason the indenture allows. The indenture allows. The indenture, the trust document that BT has set up is absolutely brilliant. You'll understand it as you go along. you won't understand it all in the beginning, but you must ask as many questions, please, on the gift of truth. Under the express trust section, you'll get the best answers ever if you go by the gift of truth, because you get it directly from Brother Thomas. So trust exists for 99 years, subject to renewal. Your body and your DNA and offspring are protected by trust, remembering that the strawman doesn't take vaccinations, injections, or told what to do. He protects the living men from that as well. So not the trust owns a non-interest bearing bank account, preferably, because you want to reduce all your benefits from government and corporations. You can run a very big business through a trust. And as I've told you, you're not subject to tax. And then all your beneficiaries, which would be your shareholders in a company, get profits whenever needed or however it is put up in the indenture. Stocks and bonds, if any of you own stocks and bonds, you're not moving entirely out of this whole corporate fiction system, because you've got the strawman acting for you. But what you do is all your stocks and bonds, which you'll understand you don't really own, you can own now by selling them into the trust with 100 Rand gold or silver coin. And then you get share certificates, capital share certificates, that are made out for the sale of the company shares. And you hold the ownership that way. We don't like using the word ownership, but it's basically your gold and your stocks and bonds are protected under the common law trust. So what is an unincorporated trust and what are its advantages? So it's an organization created and managed by trustees for the benefit and profit of beneficiaries who hold or may acquire transferable trust certificates. Trust certificates provide individual holders evidence of interest in the trust estate, assets and income. I'll give you a small indication here. Say a group of people go to buy a farm and you get a decent sized piece of land. I will warn you now not to put it into a PTY and work it under a trust or a corporate structure, because you are so bound by government and what you can and can't do. In this common law trust, once you've done your reconveyancing document, which we discussed last year, you've created a private trust in which government can't encroach on or enter into. And this is why the private sign is so important at your border. But say you all go in and you buy a piece of land, all of you can then partition your area off to wherever you want to live. I highly recommend 1 to 2 hectares of self-sustaining. So say you buy a farm of 100 hectares and each one of you gets 2 hectares. You then you buy it, obviously out of, from the sea jurisdiction, you put it into land. Each one then earns a beneficial interest certificate, share certificate. A capital share certificate. But you can survey or you can actually border off your particular land, and that's your private land. Then all the land in between is another trust in which you do all the communal structures, which you can create your small municipality and all the services and things that you need to do. Food gardens can all be done in the trust under a profit situation. I mean, you can have thousands of people in a trust. So that's just one unbelievable thing, because you're not under the jurisdiction of municipality. You're not asking zoning people what you can and can't do. You are operating in the private, and you don't have to ask permission. You know, on a farm, they'll say you're only allowed so many houses. It doesn't apply to someone who has emancipated their land and entered into this trust. In fact, you get, on a farm, I don't know about a flat, I think it would be different, but you get diplomatic immunity on your land. And your sign is the border of that. So if you don't have a sign, it doesn't mean much of everything that you're doing. So trust certificates provide individual holders evidence or interest in the true estate. So assets, income with real value, because now your land is on land. You bought it with a couple of rands of gold. So now you're in a land trust. So government can't attach anything. So it's a powerful entity by which individuals may combine their resources to operate a business for profit without the inherent liabilities of a partnership or the double taxation of corporations. You can preserve privacy, protect assets against judgments and lawsuits. It's often called a common law trust. That's why at the top I put it under organization, because it's common law. It's a strange, it's actually a peculiar trust, as you can see down here, often called a common law trust by the phrase is not descriptive of any of the peculiar characteristics of such organizations. This is the fact that you all become doubles. So you can have 100 trustees in a trust and 100 beneficiaries being the same entity as you know it, before we all went crazy and realized that we have a double. But now you're going to pull the double in. I like to call it my alter ego. And then you instruct it what to do. And it loves doing everything for the trust. So the basis for the terminology common law trust is that they are created under the common law of contracts and does not depend upon any statute for its existence. No policy, statutes, or codes involved here. And can you see how free you are, freeing yourself up from the whole structure? But to learn how to self-govern is the challenge. And you have to be diligent, accountable, and responsible. And you'll see certain people are made to do it and certain people aren't. Not saying that if you're not that way inclined, just to put yourself into a common law trust protects you from all vaccinations, from all forced anything from government. Because it's the same as emancipation. But you must remember that your body is property. So the trust also, it comes into being by two basic documents, a declaration of trust and a trust indenture. These two documents make all the provisions of who is who and who is responsible for what relative to the trust activity. See now how you can see, you're a group and you're now going to take up position to self-govern. Everybody has to self-govern, but naturally you can see there's always some form of government. Like ours, it's supposed to fix roads and run the schools properly and not enforce these pornography curriculums into our schools. It's not their business, it's our business. And it was always, I suppose, the church's business when it came to being Christian, but government has overstepped the mark. It can replace a company, a partnership, a CC, schools, clubs, farms, and everything I mentioned above. Oh, sorry, I just lost you. I'll be back in a minute. There we go. It can replace a company, partnership, a CC, schools, clubs, farms, communities, as mentioned above, all as private self-governing trust organizations that are all unincorporated, even though your trust is a legal trust. But you must remember, the legal entity owns nothing after he sold it all into the corpus of the trust. So the legal aspect of the trust is because the trustee is operating as a trustee in commerce. The declaration of the trust, by its terms and provisions, establishes the entire contractual arrangement, including identities, positions of parties, trusts, names, jurisdiction, and the status of the trust, and all particulars of administration, of which the courts of equity fully supports by the principle that equity compels. Equity law is very interesting. So the result is the creation of a bona fide legal entity. There you go. The trust is a legal entity completely protected from the legal world. Courts of equity applies natural person to the express trust because of the administration being carried out by men acting as a natural person. You've just created a third entity that holds everything in protection from everyone. Then you've got the trust corpus, which is the body of the trust, is the property. Everything that the straw man takes and puts into that with all the births and deaths and registrations of everything that he possibly owns to the toothbrush. He moves into this trust. And so all property is being held in the trust for the beneficiaries, the very subject matter of the declaration. So you see, it's the same as I taught last week. The declaration of the trust is the form, and then the trust body is the subject of the form. So the trust corpus is the operating body. It's a functional body. It's the living body. Almost anything may be held in trust. The express trust under the common law of the land, holding real estate, silver or gold, is holding the substance of the law under which it was created, ensuring that bond between law and land and the powers and guarantees that come with it. Property includes everything. Please move down. Registered, including your offspring. There it is, your children. Move everything. People, this is the most important thing that you can do to protect everything at this point. And at the same time, we're all setting up trading platforms where we can trade with each other. So to bring this in as also as in the body side of it, is that the story I told you about the farm, for instance. So you have a capital interest share certificate, which you can exchange. So your piece or your two hectare piece that you've either put a border around or you've surveyed and done your document or whatever, you don't have to. That is sellable. You can actually sell it, trade it, exchange it with anybody. But obviously, if you're going to bring a new man or woman into the trust and onto the land, it would be subject to the Board of Trustees approving it in whatever manner that they deem fit to be able to allow someone in on the land. Obviously, you don't want somebody high up in the courts or something moving onto your common law land. Maybe you could, depending on who it is. But it's the protection that the trust offers. The trustees have to protect the trust. So what must really sink in is the peculiar fact that the trust exposes the clear splitting of your double into a straw man and into the living man. And never forget that the straw man has sold all his registered crown property, including his straw man name, under copyright to the trust, the third entity. And now he owns nothing but controls everything. So you can see this, it's so very important that you now understand this double and this fact that you've emancipated and you're in this new paradigm, actually, because when you copyright the name of the trust, of the trustee in commerce, your straw man name, that value has been enormous to government. We'll go into that with the exchange. We'll explain to you how they've been doing it all and how everything is double paid in our system. So when you pay your school fees, when you get a bill, it's not a true bill. It has already been paid for you from your public trust without anyone telling you. And then they make you pay for it again. So that's where a huge sum of the money of this country is gone. So what must in your case? So template, here we go. So the template for the Express Trust, I've introduced it quite fast to you so that you can get to the template, because I'm in the opinion that to learn something is when you're in action. So you've got there will be a lot of questions. But the template for the Express Trust will be available soon on the Gift of Truth website. There is one existing now, we're just updating it. So Michelle will let you know, but there is a template on the Express Trust right now. So once you've completed the template, you will have it recorded with the Master of the High Court, which I think costs about 500 Rand. You can do it yourself. Or if you're in the Cape, Marius Tiart, who will give the contact details of, will deposit it at the master for you. And then you will have a trust number. So that's your operating number. It's your commerce number. You'll put it onto documents. You'll use it. So they are to transfer this is the big one now. So the first thing, you're going to set up your body, your trust. even while it's waiting in the courts, you can start all the procedures just to let you know that I've done all of it. So Michelle and a team and Saka and everyone who's so kind to do all of this for all of us are putting them into templates for everybody. We've also started a process of putting it onto an app, onto a phone, so that you could do it quite fast, because you can do transactions as well. And it would be interesting because your land, as I was saying, on your capital interest certificate has value. So your entire value structure compared to how you used to think changes in the common law trust. It's actually so incredible because you can start seeing that all the produce that you're producing on your land or whatever you're producing is not taxable, firstly, and you own it. Oh, no one can tell you what to do with it, but it's a means of exchanging, and you could, your trust share certificates are no different to a checkbook that we used to all own in this country. But you put the value, your shares get a value to it. Obviously, there's a capital value when you buy the land. So your share value is in that, which you could write other share capital certificates out to. You could trade some vegetables and print 1,000 of your share certificates and use it as a form of money. I wish I'd put our template up now because it looks like money. So when you do get the share certificates and all the templates, you'll see that it has a vision of money, and you would fill it in. It's all pre-printed for you, and then you would fill in the amounts, letting you know that when you set up your trust initially, you have 100 shares, capital share interest certificates, and you've got 100 beneficial certificates. So if one of the people that would buy in or want to buy into the farm and doesn't have enough money, and he said, okay, I could do 5 hours of this in exchange for my land, and he would then do a deal, and it would be beneficial for everyone to have a carpenter, for instance, on the land. So your skills are going to be of great value. So even if you didn't have fiat currency in your pocket, you could buy into a piece of land. I'm in the situation, and if somebody came along to me and was a handyman and a carpenter, I would do it tomorrow. So just to let you know, it really is a new way of thinking, but it's fantastic. So by transferring your assets into the trust, this is where you're going to learn about these share certificates. So there are 3 principles to transfer assets. So it's a buy agreement. It's not purchase. It's buy in precious metals. Purchase is negotiable instruments, though that's a very big subject, but we'll go into it on a deeper level. I didn't put I can explain that purchase is not a very nice word. We'll go into it next time. And then exchange, as I've explained to you, beneficial exchange agreements, and it's based on barter. Barter in the world we're moving into will be how these express trusts, I think, will operate, because you'll start seeing that money is not necessary, as long as you don't want all the comforts that we get from all over the world. And I'm not saying they're negative comforts, they're things that we do need, but that's when the trustee enters into commerce, and hopefully soon we'll be trading in gold and silver anyway, if you want to go overseas with it. There are already courses online where you can study how to trade in gold and silver, highly recommended, and on a very small level. I was watching a YouTube common law thing the other day, and 2 people who were listening in got the details to be able to sell the presenter silver as a donation. So it's already on the go. So the general rule, so the special guidelines ensure that transfer cannot be nullified. It's all about your documents, and especially if you're buying something from the outside and coming in, you must know your work. We, at this stage, put it into an inter vivos trust, and then I think for $100 you just amend the trust thereafter. That means there's no dealing with deeds office head on when moving somebody that doesn't know about this, if you're buying someone else's land, you just would put it into a plain interviewer's trust and amend it. Marius knows how to do it. So do I. If anyone wants to know, please pose the questions on Gift of Truth. So the general rule is trustee as owner of legal title. That is the form. Remember I explained at the top? The trustee owns the form to the trust property, which is the document. He cannot buy the trust property for himself, contrary to the trust instrument, because he's already a beneficiary in that. So we don't allow corporate fictions to actually own anything in the body of the trust. He owns all the documents and he's control of the document. He's the administrator, really. So transfer of all assets, everything other than your land and cars are done in one sale agreement template, which we have. And I highly recommend that if you've got a lot, you walk around with your phone for a day and you snap shots of everything, put it onto a file, put the description under it, and then that is your attachment for the first template that you're going to make. Your first document made from a template that you're going to put into your trust. The second one, you're going to do the copyright agreement where you sell the trustee name into the trust, into the body of the trust, so it owns it. So government doesn't own that anymore. So all these sale agreements are internal and private, and records must be kept and basic minutes kept. Got templates for everything. You'll see they're very short documents. You can sell your farm in half a page. So it's why we want to go app. Some of the setting up documents aren't simple, but you'll get to understand them. So all these sale agreements are internal, as I've said, and minutes be kept. Cars and vehicles are the only two things that you're going to do separately, and you can make choices here. I've chosen just to put my vehicles into the trust. So I took them out of my personal name. I roadworthied the car, and I think it cost 140 Rand or something to put it into the trust name. They don't like it, and they took, I think, 3 weeks to do it for me. But we've got all of those templates for your vehicles as well. It's a separate one. The other choice you can make is to not register it. But then you've got to go the common law route, and you must understand the law of traveling. Everybody's here. I did a talk at the end of last year on an incident I personally had. And it was very interesting. It was on the driving license card, which they let you use as an ID document. And it's not even a lawful card. It's not even written up in the law that you have to renew it or anything. There's no law, and they're giving us fines. So if anyone's interested in that case, they're doing it a lot at the moment with the cards. I'll share it with you. Shares and bonds, you transfer of the certificates into a trust via sale. That's your silver or gold coin, as I've said. James is on here tonight. He knows quite a lot about legal tender and selling it into the trust. As far as I put it together, they can't trust it, even if they can't touch it because it's been sold back onto the land. So James will back me up, and if any information is needed, I would put it onto Gift of Truth again. So as we know, your land and houses, if already owned in an inter vivos trust, so the trust is amended into an express trust. We have the land emancipation process, which is used to revenue houses, farms, businesses, companies, everything into the trust. So here's a nice conclusion coming up so that you can understand the actual benefits of this thing. So the bottom line is that the express trust relation is the most effective means to owning nothing while controlling it all. And when utilized properly, it affords its participants with all the ingredients of legal health and commercial wellness. It is also true that no matter how many arguments are made against the express trust, the learned man will always see through the propaganda and spin. Knowing the state's nagging concern is utter lack of jurisdiction over express trusts. Possession is 9/10 of the law. At the end of the day, in rem jurisdiction remains in the private venue, i.e. with the trustee pursuant to the private contract between he and the settlor. And the whole world is contracts, nothing else. So from natural deduction, it should become clear that the express trust can really only fail due to some misgiving of or impropriety on the part of the trustee. This is important. The trustee must therefore trust himself. To me, that's the most important thing, because you are a double. So your relationship with each other as a double is of paramount importance here. So the relationship between your trustee and the living man is what's going to spill over into the rest of the trust. And your intent as the trustee and as the living man is paramount, because all these beneficiaries are dependent on that. This does not mean that the beneficiaries are powerless in this trust. It's very much like, it depends. If you are a beneficiary without beneficial interest certificates, you would normally be one of the offspring. Even though my offspring all have certificates now because they have various houses on one piece of land. So below is the instruction for the filing of the template, which we don't have to run through. I've put it up here because you can press the button on Express Trust and have a look at the template and look at how you would fill it in and start putting all your things together. Think and look around you, look at what you own, look at what you don't want. The less you have, the better. Less things to look after. You are your house. So before putting all of this stuff into the trust, it's a massive cleanup. It literally is like a cleanup. And you'll say, do I really want to look after that old car? Sell it, get rid of it. So it's a brilliant process, this. Just to also let you know that every wealthy man in this world, Rothschilds, Trumps, our government officials, they're all running these trusts. They all own their goods in these trusts. That's why they don't want us to know about them, and that's why they can't stop us from having them. In fact, there was a court discussion last year with many judges in a room where the lawyers were trying to penalize these trusts and get them to pay taxes, and the judges all went up in arms and said, over their dead bodies, excuse the pun. So folks, it's the way to run your life. It's the way to start learning how to barter and exchange again, a much purer way of living. There's a good instruction for filing your documents as well. So I try to make it short so that we can introduce the template, so that you all have the template in your hand, whoever wants to do the Express Trust, and you can start asking questions. All the internal documents that we're hoping to eventually get onto a oh, sorry, I forgot this part here. Let's do this part, because what you are doing is you're going to publish in a newspaper the fact that you have moved into this trust. So I'll read this out for you, because you'll see the importance of it. Take notice that you're going to fill those in. These red parts are for you to fill in. This is a template for you that you use exactly to put in the newspaper. It costs about 500 Rand, run it for 5 days. And you put an ability there for anyone to object, which no one ever does, in my experience. So trust has been recorded for the properties and land located at wherever, with an absolute and good and clear record title, free from all encumbrances, and with a private indemnity bond. That's important. It's in the trust. It's been upgraded now. That's why there's going to be a few changes in the trust, so you can use the template now that is available, and you can just update it later. There won't be a lot to update, but they are paramount. So there'll be an indemnity bond for any and all bills and claims. That means we're going to set up the Express Trust with an indemnity bond, and you have access to it as a trustee to endorse municipal bills, electrical bills, whatever you have to endorse, school fees, you'll be endorsing them. That's how we're supposed to be working in this country, because everything's prepaid. So, and as I've said, trust property with all its subsidiaries and land have been unincorporated and revenued back to the original freeholders' allodial land jurisdiction. Those 4 words are gold. And is therefore a foreign de jure estate operating in a foreign contradistinct jurisdiction with regard to South Africa, the Republic of South Africa, Government of South Africa, Courts of South Africa, and any derivatives and franchises thereof. Hereinafter RSA Inc., and therefore neither subject to any RSA Inc. legislation nor jurisdiction, being only subject to the original law of nations. My favorite document on the internet is the Law of Nations, the original one. Download it, people, and you ever have, I would even print it, and you will learn how to self-govern yourself. In a larger way, it's brilliant. And note how estate is put there, and the top, as we said, you now a foreign de jure estate. Look at how it's been put under there. So it's very interesting, and I'll give you my take on that, and it will be an opinion just now. So, and the estate and its non-resident freeholder, here's some more gold words. We should actually add non-resident alien in there, because a Christian cannot be a resident. He's a sojourner, as God promised him dominion over the earth. So you're actually committing a crime by taking up resident status as a Christian. So you're the non-resident freeholder. People have diplomatic immunity in accordance with, but not subject to the Foreign States Immunity Act 87 of 1981, specifically Section 2, go and read it, people, with general immunity from jurisdiction. They can't take you into the courts. They actually literally can't do that. I'm going to tell you quickly while we're here, if you end up being summoned to the court, learn how to reply. And then the trick here is that if you're a trustee of this trust, it is your duty to make appointment with the judge who's been assigned to the case to meet him in chambers before any court case can presume. Because, as I found out, and people can research this, the chambers is a common law jurisdiction. And that's why you have to go and say, listen, do you really want to actually go into the public court? And I'm going to expose the fact that I am a double here and that everything you're doing is fraud. And apparently it's 99.9999% have never got to the court. So it also teaches you to self-govern. You walk into the court, you're on a higher level than the judge, who's not a judge at all. So he's an administrator. So, and therefore the trust properties are neither subject to expropriation, nor to be used neither as collateral. This is public notice there. Nor has assets or as surety for any debts incurred neither by RSA Inc. or in any bankruptcy proceedings, nor seized by any secondary claimants of the same. Take final notice that no foreign jurisdiction will be entered into ever. Any party wishing to create dispute with respect to the claims made herein must do so within 15 days, and such disputes must be made in writing and mailed to. You give all your details. That's your public notice. So you'll give your email address on there so that if anyone wants to rebut it or say anything, you'll get the notice. That's also very important. I wonder, I'm going to ask BT maybe to add in the copyright in there. So there's a note from Michelle and everyone. And we open for questions, because I hope they're going to be lots, so that you can all get started.
Thank you so much, Karen, for, as always, a truly wonderful and enlightening presentation on express trusts. We would now like to open the floor for questions and answers. Thank you to everybody for keeping your microphones muted until now. So this now concludes the presentation part that will be recorded. Thank you to everybody for joining us.